Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect Double Speed Legacy. And we've got a spicy brew here, Goblins. I actually played, probably for the first time in my life, a deck that I feel is truly just for fun. I ended up playing Mogg Bombers in this list, and that is my goal, is to get Mogg Bombers down and finish the game with it. If you don't know what the card is, you should not feel too bad about that. It is going pretty deep. And to catch up on the board here, Mountain puts out Aether Vial on 1 to beat out that Chalice at 1. And Dylan, using Mox Diamond to accelerate, and then met with Wasteland. So 2 of the lands of his opener are now in the bin. And Chalice at 1 on board. And we'll see what he's able to do with the rest of the lands in hand. Dryad Arbor also going to get Wastelanded. So Goblins demonstrating its mana denial role. One of the really important elements of the deck is Wasteland and Rishadan Port to kind of tax your opponent's mana. Not as efficient as that when it comes to a comparison to Death and Taxes, where you also have cards like Thalia and a few other hate bears which can make things more difficult. Goblins a little bit more aggressive in that way, a little bit more synergy in between the cards of the tribe. And it looks like Dark Confidant coming down, and that threatens to start to draw some more cards for Dylan. And Aether Vial at 2 is going to go ahead and put in a Mogg War Marshall. He'll die during the upkeep, and his Enter the Battlefield and Dies triggers is creating a 1/1 token. Almost the entirety of this deck is based around not getting 1-for-1. There is a lot of solid removal in Legacy, and you do not want your opponent to feel good when they're actually targeting your creatures with this deck. So cards like Mogg War Marshall, Goblin Ringleader, Goblin Matron, Krenko if he's hasty due to the Goblin Chieftain, all of those, when they do target them with removal, generally feel like they get the worst end of that exchange. And Vial now ticking up to 4, and Rishadan Port continuing to keep Dylan's mana base restricted. And Life from the Loam undoes a ton of work there. Those Wastelands now more just about tempo instead of trading 1-for-1. There's now card advantage in Dylan's favor, but we'll see if the tempo from Goblins is able to overcome that. Life from the Loam does make a very difficult long game. But Krenko, very real threat here. And going to be difficult for Dylan to remove if he truly is on Abzan. Abrupt Decay cannot hit him. Fatal Push you have to set up. And of course he does have Chalice at 1, so he's unlikely to be jamming Fatal Push. Oh, and Vindicate. That is going deep. And going to activate Krenko in response to get 3 more tokens. So now 5 tokens on board, representing a 2-turn clock against Dylan's board here. Gempalm Incinerator now uber removal. That can take down Tarmogoyfs. Dylan with just 3 mana to work with here. Maelstrom Pulse would be a solid choice. May have been incorrect, actually, to restrict Dylan's mana base. It's unclear what he could possibly do to get out with that extra mana. And if I had left up the Gempalm Incinerator, could have killed a token in response to a Maelstrom Pulse. So that may have been a mistake, but certainly was not punished for it. And there we go. Got a win on the board there for Goblins. Dylan going into the sideboard. Likely to load up on removal. Goblins nowhere near the boogeyman status that it once was. Very much a fringe deck at this point. Some players have been able to have continued success with it, but far from the mainstream. However, any type of creature removal generally somewhat reasonable versus Goblins, and that is the idea behind this build, is to try and mitigate that as much as possible. So your Goblin Lackeys, your Warren Instigators, your Goblin Chieftains, those cards still feel pretty bad when they remove them, but for the most part, the rest of the deck, if they want to throw a lightning bolt at a Goblin Ringleader, you're feeling pretty okay about that. Generally, that guy is going to net a couple of goblins on average, at least, as well as being a threat all by himself. So it looks like Sharpshooter coming in, as well as some artifact removal. Because of the mana denial, I think it's fairly reasonable to bring in Tin-Street Holigan. This build does splash green. That gives you access to Pendelhaven, and also the Tin-Street Holigan in the sideboard. That's a 2-mana, enter the battlefield, destroy an artifact, compared to the more popular 4-mana Tuk-Tuk. Tuk-Tuk does a little bit of damage to them as well, equal to the number of allies you control, which is 1. You don't play any other allies. So Tuk-Tuk is 4 casting costs. It does allow it to be vialed in, as well as cheated in with Lackey. So the Tin-Street does need to be cast. And what that does is it removes the instant speed advantage. And Vial's usually going to end up on 4 with this deck. The top of your curve is Krenko and the Goblin Ringleader. You do have a 5-mana Siege Gang Commander or 2 in there. This build is running 2. But you generally aren't going to be ticking up until you actually have that in hand. Unless, of course, it's a desperation situation and you really need to just hit him, on a specific turn. But Ringleaders often find more Ringleaders. You generally can just hang out at 4 and just continue to just bang out 4-mana threats. Dylan here scrying. And a solid-looking hand for Goblins here, even on the draw. Hopefully no Vial at 1. And it looks like just land go from Dylan. So Aether Vial is going to come in. Whereas Vial at 1, not really that good versus Goblins. You do have Cavern of Souls to make your Lackey uncounterable. So even if they do have a hand that could trump that early acceleration, you have trumps to their trumps. And picking up Vial. Really have plays all up and down the curve. And Vial threatens to do a ton of work this game. Looks like Lackey, Warren Instigator, Matron, Krenko. So really whatever number of counters is on Vial is going to be good. Oh, except 0 because Abrupt Decay is taking it out. But that Lackey does get snuck in. Lackey putting in Warren Instigator, and now a ton of possible Goblins being cheated into play here. If Dylan doesn't have answers, this game could be over very, very quickly. Oh, but he has quite an answer here in Garruk Relentless. That is actually going to be able to kill the Warren Instigator, and that enables him to flip. Garruk just loves picking on little creatures. What a big, tough guy he is. Why don't you go pick on a Tarmogoyf? Someone your own size, but no, he flips, and now he's going to be able to create a stream of 1/1 Death Touch Wolves, and also opens up the tutoring ability. Lackey going to come in and put in Ringleader. And we got Chieftain and Krenko, both very real threats, but only 2 mana here. So with that Vial out of the way, now if Dylan doesn't have another creature, Gempalm Incinerator could easily clear the way. Oh, and Deluge. What? Okay. -2/-2 to all the guys. That is a huge problem. Making a wolf, so sweepers can be very good. The deck designed to be resilient against one-on-one removal. There's not much you can do to insulate against sweepers like Toxic Deluge. Hitting that 3rd land though, cycling Incinerator just to get an extra draw in. So many cards in hand really just need to hit those land drops. And one more land, Krenko can come down, and this game can start to swing back in the other direction. But right now, that Planeswalker really threatens to control the board, and a Wasteland from Dylan setting us back again. So Dylan in much better shape this game. Sylvan Library. Now that could set up some card advantage for Dylan if he's willing to pay 4 life for anything on top of his deck. But at the very least, that's going to give him increased card quality as he picks from the best of the top 3 every single turn. And Goblin Sharpshooter coming down with haste, thanks to the Chieftain. And that clears all of those wolves. And now it's a question, do you swing with both creatures and take out Garruk? Really not that big a threat with a Goblin Sharpshooter on the board. Making 1/1 tokens not a valid strategy against that. And might just be able to let him live. And that's actually what's going to happen. The Chieftain's going to come across for 2. And Goblin Sharpshooter is just going to hang back and see what happens. Oh, and it looks like a Swords to Plowshares on top of Dylan's deck. That is very much a brick. And no synergy there with Chalice of the Void. No Cavern of Souls style card you're going to allow for that to get cheated in. But he did have Chandra. She shows up, KOs the Sharpshooter, and with his last dying breath, he actually takes her to the grave with him as well, tapping to do a point of damage. And Matron coming down. Grabbing a Warren Instigator. All right. So looking to take full advantage of the Chieftain. Also hedging against a potential Wasteland here, getting a threat that can be cast, even if Dylan draws another bit of mana denial. Making a guy. And Knight of the Reliquary, so that is going to be able to hold down the ground here. Looks like 5/5, that's going to be bigger than most of the goblins in the deck. And 4 mana now. And there's the Krenko. Now he does have haste, so gonna be able to get 2 goblins this turn, and those goblins of course are boosted because of the Chieftain, so they are 2/2s with haste themselves. The combination of Chieftain and Krenko, very powerful in a fair kind of way. Certainly not broken by legacy standards, but a very real threat that can close out games. Dark Confidant joining Knight of the Reliquary. And you gotta think, no, he's just gonna go for it. So he's swinging. Dylan probably a miss allocation of his role there, kind of playing the beatdown. But Krenko going to be able to demonstrate some exponential growth, the most powerful force in the universe. That linear growth of Garruk on the other side, making 1 guy a turn, nowhere near the power of doubling with Krenko. Mogg Bombers has been located. This is the reason why I actually played the deck. I actually had this in Commander, my second Commander deck. I had built a zombie, it was way too good, and then decided to build a goofy goblin deck, which also ended up being way too good. And Mogg Bombers was my favorite way to win with that. Krenko putting a ton of goblin tokens into play with a Mogg Bombers already on the battlefield, and what that means is all of those triggers are going to resolve. Or perhaps not all of them, but certainly enough to kill your opponents. I suppose you do leave a few hanging after your opponent is dead. Krenko can just make so many tokens. I actually created a spreadsheet in Excel just to be able to keep up with that. When you're tapping and untapping him in Commander, you end up in the literal millions and billions of tokens. Especially if you're only trying to kill with Mogg Bombers. It looks like here, end of turn, Krenko is going to be able to jam 5 more tokens into the battlefield. Dylan has 1 turn to answer this. And he has sacrificed a wolf to Garruk to tutor up a creature. It looks like, if I recall, he actually does not have a card that can help him out here. It looks like he's got Swords to Plowshares in hand and was hoping to grab a not Viridian Shaman, the replacement Mystic. Let me know in the comments. Drawing a blank on it. Showing my age. Viridian Shaman did get an upgrade, and it destroys enchantments or artifacts now. I feel like it's some type of zealot. Anyways, he doesn't have it. That Chalice is blocking his Swords to Plowshares, and we are going to see the reason I played the deck. 4 mana, Mogg Bombers. There he is. What a champion. Krenko tapping. Pockmark earned. Another player killed with his lack of an intervening if. Every one of those triggers goes on the stack, and they resolve one at a time, doing 3 glorious damage per trigger. That is the end of a very fun match. Abzan with some unexpected tools in there. Dylan really fought valiantly, but Krenko in the end was kind of an empty the Warrens on a stick, which was able to go way wider. And of course, Mogg Bombers there for the fun finish of that match. Well, thanks for watching, and we've got some more matches this week, all with Goblins, so hope you enjoy them. You made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you want to help the channel, you can click like or subscribe, or you can check out some of our other videos covering Magic's most powerful formats. Thanks for watching.